Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you. So glad to see you. Many people all over, and glad that you've come. Yeah, nice to see everybody. Excellent. Well, I have lots to say, of course, as usual. Lots to share. We have had such an interesting month since we last talked. And last time I was talking to you about waves of consciousness, mysticism, how all this is working right now. And now upon us, my friends, is the final reconciliation. So we are here at the end of September. We have October and November and December coming through until the next solstice. And of course, as it goes, the Earth and our solar system live in a set of cycles, as you know. These cycles start from an atomic level and they go all the way up to a universal level. There's many, many layers to consciousness in this. But what's happening in our galaxy is actually incredibly unprecedented. We're being asked to reconcile light and dark. So what does that mean for your 3D life as a human right now? It's actually incredibly intense. We have basically all your worst fears showing up at your doorstep. Many, many people reporting to me, people in my own life and family noticing, very clear, very dramatic, especially in the past week with this full moon and with the equinox. And we have that full moon in Libra, we have this balance piece coming up around there is an imbalance. And we're being asked to balance it. That is what this reconciliation is all about. So it doesn't surprise me anymore getting phone calls, getting messages, watching people having to step up to face some of their very worst fears. Everyone's got different worst fears. And this is not different for me. I too have had some of my very worst fears coming to knock on my door. Not literally as in like a person knocking, but actual events that I would have wished and prayed would have never happened. And yet in this past week, or at least this past month, they have certainly happened. But this is our chance, my friends. I always have so much constant awareness in the moment that we must make these choices as creator beings in the now, in the moment, every moment. So we're making a choice. This is a choice point. This is some big final pieces falling into place so that you can see what you really came here to do. All of us have come to reconcile some sort of duality, some polarity, right? For me, it happens to be good and evil, light and dark. Some folks, it's abundance and scarcity. Some folks, it's home or the lack of home. Being able to have our children close to us or not. Illness and health. Dark, difficult, and dangerous things right at our doorstep. But I want to give a shout out to the divine feminine and, of course, the divine masculine for stepping up, but especially the feminine and the feminine in all of us, stepping up, saying, I have had enough. I'm going to stand in my power. And what happens when you stand in your power? You're not resisting, you're not fighting. You're standing in your power and you're putting your attention on solutions. You're saying, I'm not going to feed the beast. I'm not going to continue to interact with you on your game board anymore. I'm going to be in sovereign service, which is a very different way to think about service these days. I'm going to be in sovereign service to the things that are going to help us survive as a species. And that's what's on the table. Are we going to survive as a species or not? When the end of an experiment of consciousness occurs, there's always going to be a huge question of now what? But the good part is that you have your agency. You know, I've always spoke against this human hatred program that blames humans for all these different things. Everything from the way that the earth is changing to the fact that at the end of an age, you always have massive shifts. We're blamed for so many things, and this constant hatred of humanity seeps in and it turns into self-hatred and destruction. It's that what's going to destroy the human race more than anything is our own self-hatred. It's time to drop that, and for real this time. If you haven't been processing this worthlessness and arrogance dynamic, get to it. I'm going to be firm on that because it's time. It's time. Why? What's going to happen? What's going on? Humans are being asked to step in their power because we're living conduits. We've been surrounded in false electromagnetics. Everyone's pretty worried about these things, these technologies that everyone wants to integrate into the human body, as if the human body is not already perfect. It's quite shocking to me that we don't see our bodies as already amazing and beautiful and important and perfect. This has to end, or we won't survive. There won't be humanity. But what's the good part is we're being ignited into awareness, into being awake right now. So we're being ignited as these conduits of living power with the real internet, 1000G, we'll call it. Who cares about 5? 1000G. We are that. You are. Your consciousness animates this body. It draws in electromagnetically, contains multitudes of conscious beings in your body symbiotically and very appreciatively living alongside you. Furthermore, your field is massive. Your electromagnetic field is huge. You can imagine the beach in Italy. You can imagine an amazing building in China. You can imagine anything, which is basically remote viewing, by the way. I want to remind you that your third eye is not broken. It is the imagination. You've been told things that aren't true. It's time to reveal all these lies that have been our foundation for a very sick and wild culture that is more obsessed with death than it is with beautiful life and the real internet. The real internet, Indra's net. You've heard me say Indra's net. It's an ancient concept that we are part of a net, a network. This is a multi-thousand-year-old concept, many tens and hundreds of thousands years old. And we're remembering it now. It's the Indra's net of 1000G. That's you. You are a node on this net, and you are an integral part of it. And as you stand in your power and say, I am sovereign, I am going to be the very best person, the very best human I can be. I'm going to do my best. Then you ignite this multi-layered, extremely powerful Indra's net. You ignite it. And what is happening with that? It's doing some really interesting things to people, this igniting. At the end of experiments, these things happen. Our experiment has been going on for at least 500,000 up to 1,000,000 years on this planet. It's over now because we have this final choice. Are we going to remain here as humankind and really up our game and become conscious and create a new experiment? I'm certainly here for that. And I believe that this new experiment can do two things. It can ignite this network so that we do not feel this loneliness, this isolation, this separation. That's not true. So what's happening to people? They're thinking of someone and that person suddenly calls them, but it's happening more often. Everybody's had that happen to them usually, but now it's happening all the time. I thought of my friend just a couple of days ago and thought, he's probably going to send me his really neat crystal grid that he does for every equinox and solstice. I think he's sending it to me now. And I looked down at my phone and there it was. But this is happening all the time now. It's every day, not just every once in a while anymore. We're having dreams that are connecting us to what the collective is experiencing. A lot of it's extremely nightmarish. I had a terrible nightmare last night of the divine masculine losing their children. And I'm seeing this psychically, emotionally, mentally occurring. We're seeing it happen in real life. But it elicits compassion for us to be able to say, I see you, I feel you. I may not know you, but you're human too, and I love you, and I'm going to send this light and this power and this hope, this prayer to you. So this is what's being asked of us. What else is happening? People are seeing things. The electromagnetic field of the earth is going internal. People say in geology it's getting weaker. I don't think it's getting weaker so much as it gets internalized, right? And when that happens, we're bombarded by literally, physically, 3D. Sometimes I know I speak very esoterically, but I'm speaking in physics at this point, very 3D here. We're being bombarded by what some people call crazy stuff from space. But it is measurable, actual energy coming from everywhere, from the black hole, the sun, all the stars, the planets, the solar system, the electromagnetic current sheet from the galaxy, the electromagnetic current sheet from the earth and sun. All these things are changing, and they're allowing for a new wave of energy to come and actually affect our bodies. And so that's very real. People are starting to see more stuff. They're starting to experience weird things. They're starting to recognize that there is a multidimensional experience to be had. If they didn't believe in it or have experience with it before, they're starting to ask questions, which is great. Because now they get to discover the truth about being human, that we are multidimensional beings. And it's wonderful. Furthermore, people are getting together and they're actually standing in their power and they're putting their energy into solutions. They're saying enough is enough. They're standing together. And the more of us that stand, the more exponentially powerful that 1000G Indra's net becomes. We don't need centralized energetics for all these things to occur. We need our personal consciousness taking responsibility for what you are doing here now, taking responsibility for what you're going to create each day. I like to say to my friends that I am married every day. I make my marriage every day. Yes, it's true, I took vows, but every day, every moment, we choose to be married, my husband and I. We choose to be parents together. We choose every day. And some days it's harder than others. Some days it's like, I don't know, is this going to work? And then we get through it and we keep choosing every day. This is the same. You're choosing every moment, every day to be human right now. Let me add more to this. It sounds really cool that all these people are getting together, they're standing in their power, they're waking up to what needs to be done each moment. They're not assuming they know what's going to happen in the future. Nobody can do that. I'm a predictive model specialist. You can't predict the future, not to a perfection T. You can get close, but you'll never get to that 0 point because there's so much happening at a quantum level all the way up to a universal level, affecting how we navigate reality. And each of those moments in a trajectory of time, where time is more of an ocean than a line. There are no timelines, folks. It's an ocean. And each moment you make a micro adjustment in your journey, it's going to outflow as a major adjustment in your journey. So each moment, your choice actually affects the future of everything and everyone around you. That's what being a creator being means. And so these micro adjustments you make every moment in your choice to be a human being, that is that realization that, oh, wow, I really do need to be so present and be fully in my body to do this right now, to navigate what's happening. So when we do this, when we become really present, what's going to show up is our reaction as a species to crisis. This is where identity distorts. When you try to maintain a highly structured identity that has arisen from source, it's like building a Lego castle on something that is extremely still. And that Lego castle is not very strong. It's going to fall apart and you may need to change it sometimes. You may say, like, this whole chunk of my identity here, it's not going to be useful anymore. So that changes constantly. You can't put anchors in something that is constantly changing. Identity is not how we're going to move forward as a species. It's quite nice to be able to say, I am this or that, but being this or that also causes a us and them effect. That's not how we'll be able to rebuild our planet, reclaim our natural living in harmony with nature and the earth instead of exploitation and subjugation, being able to get our needs met with varieties of different people involved and different needs, different cultures. You cannot build a society off of something that is constantly changing. You have to have a 0 point. And that is simply that we are humans, my friends. That we are creator beings and we are humans. That's why I like the constitution of the country I live in. I live in Ecuador. And the Constitution here, I highly recommend that you go look at it. It's quite special. It's a lot more deep into that human experience than any constitution I've read before. And it continues to show us how beautiful and important the appreciation of natural living and being a natural human is. That's more like, and it's not perfect, but that's more like what we need to begin putting our effort into. It's going to take a long time. We're in this for the long haul. But it's beautiful work. It's creative work. It means that your skills and all these new skills are going to be more valued than ever. Your conscious ability to be a creator being is more important than ever. But there's another big reason why it's important. Two really big reasons. One has to do with the place and space we're in, the end of an age. And we have an approximate understanding of how the end of an age comes about. It comes around every 12,000 years or so, give or take, quite a bit actually, because the Earth has been slowing down quite a lot. We didn't used to have 365-day years. We used to have much shorter or longer years. So it's kind of important for us to understand how time is not something that's static. It doesn't stay the same, especially not when you're on an incredible Earth here in a solar system, in a galaxy, in a universe that's moving and living and changing all the time and merging with new galaxies, which is happening at the moment too. In about 140 million years, we're going to be one with Andromeda. Andromeda is touching our galaxy right now, and we're going to be merging together, and it's going to change everything. It's going to change our solar system. It's going to change our way we experience time. It's going to change our cycles. It's going to change our celestial understanding. There won't be 12 zodiacs in the sky anymore. There might be 20. There might be 100. So that's coming up. And 140 million years sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's something that we're going to work towards. But when this end of an age happens, you have an electromagnetic sheet that comes through every 12,000 years like a big, huge, sweeping energetic. It pushes a whole lot of plasma and debris and dust, among other things, along with it, and it comes into the solar system. It heats the solar system up. It causes more and more electromagnetic heating of the planets. It causes the sun to act out. And in the next 3 to 6 years, we should expect some kind of miniature nova or very large solar event. This has been known for ages and ages. It's science. And it's becoming more and more evident instead of less so that this is the case. We have market events in our geological record to show this is true. But I have something pretty wild to tell you. Maybe you can believe this, because I believe it. I've seen it in action. I've seen people protect people, places, things, animals with their own electromagnetic field. As the Earth's field becomes more internal, she's more vulnerable to solar events and to this electromagnetic current sheet that comes around from the galaxy. She's more vulnerable. Well, in some of our geological events, these solar happenings become a dramatic issue for a very vulnerable Earth. It can cause mass extinctions and all sorts of different kinds of problems. It can cause incredible damaging events to the planet. What if I told you that if we can get our Indra's net up, our 1000G up, and start practicing it every day, that we could protect our own planet. Why do you think there's more people on this planet than have ever been before? At the end of the experiment of consciousness, it's so that we can do this. We're asking everyone to step up now. Hey, it's up to you to protect your beautiful place that you live. It's up to you to protect your family, your life, your neighborhood. It's up to you to protect and work on connecting everyone in some way, shape, or form. Perhaps it's that you get together in little mastermind groups. I'm seeing more and more and more of these little mastermind groups popping up. I love it. I think it's so cool. Or like what my parents did when I was growing up, prayer groups, getting together to pray. It's the same. It's the same idea. And when you pray, your field becomes very, very powerful. When you meditate together, or when you get together to talk about what's going on in your life and you're just connecting with love and compassion, the field becomes more and more powerful. It becomes more connected. You don't have to be in person. We happen to have a pretty cool other technology. I call it the fake internet, but it is an internet. And we can do that. But hey, if the internet gets blown up by a, solar flare or something, which is totally possible, then we really need to be able to have the real internet online. So get together with some of your friends and family and say, at this time every week or every day, let's say a little prayer together. At this time every week or so, let's get together in a meditation at the same time, and then we'll message each other about how that felt. Try to do something that helps you to not use this internet, but to use the real one, that comes from the mind, the heart, and the gut. There's 3 fields that the human body create. The gut mind creates a field that connects to the earth through the bacteria of the body. The heart mind creates an electromagnetic field that connects to everything. It's the combining field from the heart, right? And then the brain mind connects you to higher thought, to God or source or the universe. And so these fields, they all work together, and it connects you to the many layers of the real internet, which starts at the atomic and ends at the edge of the universe. That's how big this internet is. It's massive. The other piece that's really important is that we're in a spiritual situation that some may call a war. But this war is not a singular one. It's not one that is just affecting us. It's actually a galactic war, and it's been going on for many millions of years. So we are still at war, it's true, but it's not a brand new war. It's an ancient one. We were asked to try out this experiment without having memory of these true galactic histories. That's ending too. Everyone is starting to remember and experience, of course, that this is a galactic situation we're in. And you've heard me speak very openly. In fact, I believe it was last September, a year ago, or maybe 2, I think it was a year, where I openly talked about being abducted for the 3rd time. I speak very candidly and openly about my experiences because I work with many thousands of people. Up to this point, I think I've worked with over 10,000 individual people. And it grows very fast. And a huge percentage of them have had abduction experiences. This is fact. It's undisputable. In social science, which my master's is in social science, when you have a sample of 10,000 people. That's a killer sample. That's a great sample. And they're from all over the world, from all different backgrounds. And they certainly don't all look like me. So I'm just pointing out, I'm working with people who are incredibly different from each other. It's a pretty neat sampling of humankind. I'd love to have more people from the Middle East and from Asia to be able to talk to about their experiences, to be seen, to have some compassion in their life. It's difficult to reach them because of language and other issues. Same with Africa. That continent is very cut off from being able to share a lot of their experiences. But I'm so blessed I get to be here in South America, where these are very well known and well talked about. Literally, the local taxi drivers here will tell you about all of their encounters they've had. It's common to see UFOs on the mountain Mandango here. In fact, a whole bunch of people saw UFOs this past weekend. So it's pretty normal. And UFOs could be human or not. But that's the deal we are looking at now. It's what we might call cosmic disclosure of truth. I want it to be normalized that we can talk about our wild experiences. I want it to be normalized that we can be heard and have compassion for each other. Because we're going to be encountering everything from hybrids who are suffering. All hybrids suffer. Look at the story of Chiron, the centaur, right? He was technically, that concept is a hybrid, or the minotaur. These beings suffered because these two DNAs were spliced together in a way that they shouldn't be, that was unnatural. And that's what's happening to a lot of people on this planet. They're suffering because they have DNA that's been spliced together that would not normally happen. And so it causes a huge problem for their mental ability to navigate their reality. And it's really important that we are kind and gentle and compassionate to these beings. It's important that we drop our prejudices around each other so that we can be doing this with beings that are not even from this planet. I'm calling you to universal compassion. There is a place for everything and everyone in this universe. It's when you stand in your power and your compassion and your love that things like the demonic don't want to mess with you anymore because you're not interesting. You're not feeding them your pain because you're resisting. You're saying, the only thing I have for you now is love and compassion. They hightail it way out of your field. They don't want anything to do with you then. It's not easy to do. I'm not telling you that this is a cinch. No, that's not why you came. I always tell everyone, you're a badass if you're here. If you're here on the planet right now, you're a badass. You got invited to do this. I speak openly about my experiences because they're a human experience. You are able to perceive and see through your imagination. You're able to feel the truth with your heart and discern. You're able to know with your gut. You are a human. It's go time. It's time for us to break down all of egoic structure, or what we might just start calling distortion. Everyone has kind of like a problem with the word ego. So I'm cool with working with language. Let's call it distortion. 4 types of distortion we need to break down. All of your judgment. You are one with all things because you are made from Source God. That's what it means to be made in the image of God. You have arisen from Source because of the will and the creativity and the love of Source. Then that means everyone else is too. But there's always going to be someone opposite of you in the circle, my friends. In the big circle of life, there's, no matter what position you're in, there's somebody who's directly opposite of you, who you might say, wow, I really don't like them. I didn't say you had to like them. I said you had to have compassion for them. I didn't say you have to forgive them. That might not be your job. Maybe leave that up to the priests at church or the person in their own life. Maybe they need to forgive themselves first. But accepting all things as part of this universe doesn't mean that it has to stay the same. We can have compassion and continually work towards change that brings more equanimity to the table. The second distortion is your attachments. We're all attached to stuff, folks, but that's a very poor way to love things. Attachment is kind of like loving someone, but running your love through a little tube instead of letting it radiate. So dropping your attachments is really key. So if you think of your children, for example, or your pets, or your home, or your job maybe, or your best friend, you say, gosh, I really love them. I can't imagine what would happen if they die, or if something bad happens, or if I lose this position, or I want you to imagine it. You need to prepare for change, but by noticing it and how it makes you feel pain in your body, by welcoming that, you're dissolving your attachment and saying, this is going to make me love you more. I can love you more fully by saying, I'm not attached. I just simply am fully in love right now in the moment, and each moment choosing that love, right? Just like choosing your marriage every moment, or choosing to be a parent. Choosing to be a human. We can then choose to fully love the things that we normally were attached to and we're afraid they'll change. They're totally going to change. The only thing that doesn't change in this universe is Source God, folks. That's it. There's only one thing that doesn't change. So the third thing is, of course, all of your expectations. This just leaks energy out into the future or the past, right? So if you go to a family gathering and you just expect all your siblings to be jerks to each other, well, that's you leaking energy into the past. And then you're distorting reality with your expectation. Drop it. You're living in the moment now. So live in the moment. Live in the moment and say, I don't know what to expect, because that's more true. Don't expect stuff to happen in the future. You can never know that. Learn a little bit of something from the South American culture. We always jokingly say, mañana, mañana, which means tomorrow, tomorrow. You'll go to the store. Do you have this thing mañana? You go get your car fixed. Do you have it done yet? Mañana. You got to go with the flow. You have a meeting set up, a lunch meeting, and your friends don't show up for an hour. That's normal. Go with the flow. You can't have expectations here. It's not going to work. And when people do show up on time, it's awesome. And then you can celebrate that. When the taxi driver shows up on time and you show up on time, everybody celebrates. Everybody's happy. But if it's a little bit later, you're later, everything's late, no one freaks out. Mañana. It's just the go with the flow, collectivist attitude that's very normal for these types of cultures. And I think it's positive because we do have to flow, folks. And certainly being from the United States myself, being drilled into me to be punctual, I have to turn my paper in at the exact right time. I have to show up to work at the exact right time. You can't be 5 minutes late. That workaholism drilling down into my self-worth. I was sitting here and it was 5 minutes till our event, and I thought, if I get on 5 minutes early, people would freak out. And if I get on 5 minutes late, people would freak out. So I gotta be really punctual today. I just think it's quite funny that we worry about this sort of stuff instead of going with the flow. And that's what the end of expectations means. And then the last distortion is resistance, which is tricky. We resist the other. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here. We resist the other. We resist change. It's been instilled in us to resist change, which causes a huge amount of suffering, as you know. We don't want our little kids to grow up and become crazy teenagers. We don't want our parents to get old and die. We don't want to get old and die. We're afraid of change because it leads to things like loss. That has to end. We must stop resisting change and flow and the natural order. I believe in the immortal soul. I believe that death is a precious thing instead of a terrible thing. I believe that we are here to play in the change of the quantum, the personal, the universal, the galactic. It's all constantly changing in wonderful ways. And some of the things that the extraterrestrials I've met have taught me is to appreciate this more than ever, to really appreciate change because of asymmetry. Symmetry in nature is abnormal. It's more likely that there's going to be more stuff on one side and less on another, and that natural flow to try to create balance, like with what's happening with dark and light right now, with good and evil. There's been a balance that's off, right? So there's been more darkness, more evil running the show. Well, that's changing now because of asymmetry. And soon it's going to be more like this. There's going to be more light. There'll be more transparency. There'll be more goodness. There'll be more innocence, more purity. But it takes a lot of effort for this to occur. And that's where you're at right now. You're right there facing this in your own life. Is there a whole lot more darkness in your life than light? Probably. Because that's been the human experience thus far for a very long time. Since the beginning of our experiment here, but much longer as well. There's been an imbalance in the whole galaxy. That's going to be changing too, but because of this very pivotal planet called Earth and all these little amazing beings they call humans. That's the kind of impact you have. You have a galactic impact and you didn't even realize it because you've been cut off from this on purpose. Who wants to have a bunch of slaves that know that they are literally galactically important? Nobody. So if we can purify ourselves of these first distortions in consciousness, right, the 4 that I just mentioned, then we also need to work on our trauma. Most of the trauma written in your DNA is not yours. It's very important for you to learn how to shift this. So I'm going to literally describe a tool to help you identify this. It's time to do a little, what we might call recapitulation of your life and, of course, your ancestors' lives. So I'm going to actually pick a challenging background for you to give you an example, right? Not my own, which is plenty challenging, but I'd like to pick one that has stood out to me in many sessions with people. I've had some clients who are what we would say Ashkenazi Jewish, and they have a lot of different kinds of genetic issues, most of which, and my argument has always been that mutations that cause problems in the embodiment are because of long, extreme amounts of trauma being built up in the epigenetic system. So in the memory of your DNA, you have built up all this trauma that's happened over many, many generations. And it causes mutations through stress. This is the simple, basic way to understand how mutations and epigenetics work together. So we have this particular group of people who have had a lot of specific types of trauma. They have had experiences with genocide. They've had experiences with not having a home, war, famine, a lot of different specific things in their history. So what I have told these beautiful people and what I'm telling you now is to look at your genetic history. Let's say you're adopted and you don't really know what that is. Make a good guess, but please don't give your DNA to these companies. Please, it's not smart. They are I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but it's not good. Your DNA is very special. It's unique in this universe, and protect it. So just make a good educated guess for yourself, right? And some of the ways you can make a guess are your blood type. There's blood types actually can tell you a lot about where your likely ancestors are from. So look at that. It's easy to research this. And then, of course, your phenotype. There is no races, folks. There's only one race. It's the human race. And the differences between us are called phenotypes, the way you look. And it is truly skin deep. So your phenotype can give you a clue, right? So I've instructed these folks, all right, you need to sit down and look at your own life, right? And so you need to come up with things that you want to shift out of your trauma, big, broad topics like, let's say you've been sexually abused. All right, sexual abuse trauma, mental, emotional abuse trauma. I have issues around food, so I might include, hey, I've got trauma around being an anorexic. Good. So that's a big, broad, nice topic. Lots of trash bags in the DNA, trash bags of trauma in the DNA around that. And likely, my eating disorder issues probably have genetic trauma linked to them too, because of course we've all been traumatized. So you got to name this stuff and then go into your history. So like genocide was a big piece around the Ashkenazi Jew genetic history. Or one of my clients was from China, and her family really witnessed how the destruction or the subjugation of nature was causing everyone to literally starve to death. And this kind of obsession about subjugating nature was a trauma in her DNA, this sadness that they didn't have a culture anymore that lived in harmony with nature. That was a big trauma. So you got to dig pretty deep. Like if you're pale like me, you probably had a whole bunch of ancestors go through siege warfare. So what happened there? Plague and famine and children dying and all this terrible stuff. Rape and pillaging and, the trauma from the soldiers too, having fought wars. All of this is written in your DNA, your epigenetic expression. But here's the good news. You can shift it. So you got to come up with your list of stuff you want to shift. Let's say there's 50 things. Now you need 50 other things to replace it with because of physics. You can say, I just want to replace it with my soul. That'll work nicely. Or you can get more specific. What's the opposite of genocide, right? Community. What's the opposite of sexual abuse? Quality sexual relationships, right? These are frequencies, they're energies. You're going to balance it out. You need to create balance now in yourself. If you want balance in the world to happen, if you want balance in this galaxy to happen, focus on you. Your position on Indra's net is key. Without you, there's a huge gap, a lot bigger than you think. And then you're going to use your heart to help you. So you need to name your list. And this is how I do this. I blow my heart field up and I invite all my ancestors, living or dead, to come and join in, right? They're all there. And so I ask them to stand with me, stand behind me in my heart. And then I do a command. I create a nice, beautiful space for myself. Maybe you would like to invite guidance or Jesus or Source God in this as well, right? Perhaps the angelic, if that's what you like to work with. And then we do this command because we are creator beings. Dear heart, please lift from my whole body and field and the bodies and fields of my ancestors these things, and then name them. And each one, you need to feel it. You need to feel it in order for it to dissolve. And when you feel it, it's going to get hot. It burns. And the deeper you go into your list, the hotter you're going to be. Roll with it. This heat is literally changes happening at a deep, deep level cellularly because your body's listening to you. You'll get through your list and you'll say, now, because your body needs to know when to do all of this, right? And then you take a big, deep breath. And you'll feel it working its way out of your system. And then you're going to replace it. Dear heart, please fill my whole body and field and the bodies and fields of my ancestors with, and then name your replacements. Or perhaps it's simply just your soul, which is perfect with my soul and their souls, right? Now, and then take another deep breath. And do this regularly and see if your list changes. Maybe you find new things. Maybe you're feeling really finished with a good portion of it. And you keep working with the things that show up in your life. So maybe your grandma was racist. And that is actually a type of trauma. Racism is unhealthy. It's a distortion. And so maybe racism really triggers you because of that distortion in your genetics. And you need to heal the racism because it's a distortion. And then you want to replace it with universal compassion. This would be a great way to work together all the time. Let's say you're getting ready to do cohort work or peer group work or work with any cohorts at your job, right? Maybe you can begin with a clarity. We can all say together, I ask for all distortions to be shifted and replaced with clarity and compassion now for all of us as we do this work. Doing intentional beginnings and endings, especially when it comes to the distortion of trauma, is how we're really going to be able to focus and put enough quality, pure energy into what we create. So I'm all for making intention happen at the beginning of anything we do. It could be religious if you all want that or not. But to decide on it together as you wish is very key. That's why I like how I was raised, when we would pray before we'd eat. It made everything more special. It made everything more clear. It connected us to the fact that what was on our plate certainly didn't magically get there. It was because of the will of God, for sure, and of course the hard work of the people and the earth and all the plants and animals. That's how loved we are, how important we are in all of this. So we have a chance to make these shifts now. You don't have to wait. You can make some changes from inside yourself and then offer some ideas to your family members or your friends, your household, your neighbors. Do it compassionately. They might think you're nuts for a minute. And then if you plant a seed, you'll be quite surprised. And so now I have another piece I want to share with you. A lot of you are what I would call harmonizers. These are the folks that walk into a room and see a wonky picture on the wall and it drives them crazy. Or they walk into a room and they notice like everybody seems to like be getting along verbally, but you can feel it that they don't like each other. Or you're walking along and some lady on the street's yelling at her dog, right? Or her kid. And that disharmony affects you and you can't stop thinking about it all day long. Oh, I wish I could have said something. I wish I could have done something, but it probably wasn't appropriate. So harmonizers are often worrying about what can I say? What can I do to make things better, to balance it out, to create balance, to be balance, symmetry. And the problem with that is that symmetry is not natural. Even the two wings of a butterfly are not perfectly symmetrical because there needs to be movement in the universe. There'll be a split, incredible, minute moment as things, balance out where there is perfect balance. And then, of course, that begins to change immediately. That balance can't stay. So asymmetry creates movement through time. It's how we experience time is because of asymmetry. It's very important to know this. And a harmonizer believes that there can be balance that stays the same. That would literally stop the whole universe. It wouldn't exist anymore. So what can harmonizers do? Sometimes they can do something. Sometimes they can say something. Sometimes they can say, hey, I'm so sorry you're having a hard day with your kids today. It's so hard being a parent, especially nowadays. I just want to let you know, I know you're angry right now, but I know you're probably trying the best you can. I just want you to be seen for a minute and know that I have compassion for you. I've done that. I've had people walk up to me and say, I noticed how you were talking to your kid and you're doing a great job. Being critical to someone who's stressed out isn't going to help, folks. And all of us are beyond our max with stress. Compassion is how we're going to heal our societies. And all of us know that. This is like the 10 Commandments. It's basics, the virtues, patience, patience people, right? So we can often have compassion, and that's how you start. So let's say you notice this person who's freaking out on the street, right? Maybe they're yelling at their kid, their dog, whatever, and it might not be appropriate for you to go walk up to them. You've got to discern that. But it's happening in your field of awareness. So, you need to discern how close to you when something's happening warrants you to do or say something. This is tricky, right? But there's a third option. The third option is to notice the distortion first. So obviously, this person's really angry, and the child or the dog in this case is very afraid. So we have anger and fear. Anger and fear exist. Sometimes they're really important. Sometimes they're damaging. Sometimes they create more balance. Sometimes they don't. So you're discerning this. All right, this anger and fear, it's problematic. Notice it. It's a frequency. All emotions are frequency. Your body's a conduit. It receives frequency, and it gives frequency. That's why it's so important to be very responsible for the frequency you're putting out there, right? So notice it, and then offer something spiritually from your heart to them. You don't necessarily have to say or do anything. You can offer, I notice this anger, I notice this fear, and I offer patience and I offer joy now from my heart as a gift. And then use your imagination. I like to shower people with joy and patience, or, imagine rose petals of joy and patience, or blow some joy, patience glitter their way, right? Envision it as radiance getting to them as a gift, right? This is akin to offering energy or prayer. So another way to do it might be, dear God, please help these two folks, this child and this person, or this dog and this person, with their anger. Help them with patience and their fear. Help them with joy. I ask this on their behalf now. Amen, right? Or you can say, I offer from my soul this special gift, and you give it to them. And then go about your day. Now, if you notice something, sometimes if you do this, it'll make a shift immediately. I've done this lots and lots. This is how I know it works. And they might not even notice me, the lady and their kid or the guy and their dog, right? But I might ask for this to occur, and bam, suddenly it stops. Suddenly the guy leans down and pets the dog and says, I'm sorry. Suddenly the mom leans down and hugs their kid and says, let's forget about this and move on, right? Or even better, they offer to be more patient or try harder, right? They ask for forgiveness. It's important to do that with our children, to show them that we're human and that they too can ask for forgiveness without feeling ashamed. Another time I was in a museum, and wonky pictures drive me nuts too. I was in a museum and there's a wonky picture and I'm like, because you can't touch it, right? Or you get kicked out of the museum. I remember sitting there and like, all right, I'm welcoming the wonky frequency I'm feeling right now, because I'm having like a wonky triggered reaction. It's mine. I'm welcoming this, and I'm just offering balance. I'm offering balance to myself and the situation. And suddenly a security guard walks in and fixes the picture. It was great. I didn't necessarily think it was my own doing, but it was too much of a coincidence that right in that moment I'd asked for balance. And it happened. Try it out. Experiment with this stuff. It's quite fun. You never know what kind of amazing shifts can happen. Maybe you ask for transparency and finally everybody stops pretending that they don't have a problem. Maybe you give the gift of patience and suddenly now your family's talking to you differently. So this is a way to work in the world consciously and stay in the moment, noticing these frequencies, because there's always something you can do. It might be spiritual and emotional within yourself, but that creates a huge impact on the world. I'm so lucky that I get to see this impact. I see the waves of consciousness. I see your waves of consciousness. I see the human race having difficult days, tragic days, hard days, and overcoming them the best that they can, surviving a little bit longer, making it through another day. It's not easy, but it can be very beautiful to be heard and seen. So notice what's at your doorstep now. Understand what your fears are, because they are being revealed to you so that you can discern them fully and move forward. Move forward by standing in your power, becoming a part of the 1000G Indra's net, claiming your position there. You were always there. Now it's time for you to recognize it. Good. So I'm going to answer some questions from here. And I want you to, think about what's on your plate right now. What can I answer for you? What is going on with your life that you'd like to share and get some clarity about? I can't do personal readings necessarily, but I can give you some clarity about things. What's happening in your life? I'm going to scan through the comments right now, so you'll see me reading. And I'm going to just kind of see what's popping up right now. So I think I was able to clarify for you, Caroline, how we get this Indra's net up and running. Well, it's running. Part of it is to recognize you're part of it and that it's running. And then connect with as many people as you can. Try to start some groups with your family and friends in different ways. Perhaps your family's really religious like mine. My mom's probably watching. And if she is, I'm going to ask her, maybe we can do a special prayer every day as a family. It's something I know she would love for us to do. And so I'm going to try to do that myself. I've been trying to go to some mastermind groups every once in a while. I don't have that much time, but I do try to show up. And sometimes stuff happens. I'm like, you guys, I can't come. Everything just hit the fan, literally. So getting together with these groups, like little mini groups, and just checking in. I have a couple of lady friends. We do a lot of mystical work together. We check in with each other. I have friends that, a month or two or multiple months may go by before we talk, but we always do talk as often as we can. And I'm the worst about this. I have really, really great friends in my life, and I often am so internal, trying to work on my stuff and work on my trauma, especially the past year. And so I feel bad sometimes because I feel like I haven't been as good of a friend. But the nice part about real friendships is that, hey, when you do get together, you always have that friendship. It doesn't change. And if you're going with the flow, then you won't take it personally that your friend might be really having a hard time going in themselves, working on stuff. I'm really lucky. I have friends who know that they know I might be like disappeared for a few months, and then I'll call them eventually and check in. But I'm disappeared because I'm digging up my own stuff and my own trauma and dealing with the way that that shows up in my daily life. So that's how we do this, folks. It's literally trying to be as natural of a human as you can. So connecting right now is key. That's how we get it up and running, right? Per se. So just let's start there. If I get more ideas about how this all will work, I'll tell you. But definitely work on any of those distortions, those 4 distortions I talked about, right? And any trauma stuff. Use the genetic healing piece for sure to get to the bottom of it. We need to purify ourselves. Purity, purity, purity. Reconciliation is key at the moment. If being able to go to church and get that reconciliation there is what you're trying to do right now, I highly recommend jumping right in. That's what's cool about structured religion. Everybody that I know, who's kind of walked away from a religion is frustrated by it, but there's some built-in pieces to it that are key, like community. And you can create and use those same concepts outside of religious structure if that makes you happy, or do both. By golly, dip your toe in lots of pies, right? And then we have some gifts coming up. Diane said she was able to facilitate relief. I like that you said that instead of like, I healed her. Diane says she facilitated relief for her aunt's excruciating back pain before the ambulance arrived. That's precious. This is quantum healing. We can help each other heal. So notice that. Ask God or source, however you like to say it. I like to literally say source God to help you to do this, right? If you're an empath, your field is moving and shifting a lot of stuff off the planet. Every day, say this, dear heart, please lift and allow anything in my field that needs to go out throughout this whole day now, and then take a big deep breath. You can facilitate your own field doing this work without you having to consciously do it all the time. The empath's field is so full of stuff because it's literally acting like a hurricane, lifting trauma and difficulty out of the whole collective. So the empath's skill is actually a superpower, but that's how you use it. None of that's for you, and if it remains, it's for you. If the emotion or energy remains after you've done that command, ask for it to go ahead and use your field to shift. It's not allowed to come into your personal field unless it's for you. If it remains in the personal field, then it's there for you to examine and say, where is this in my body? What does this feel like? Why is it here, right? And you find out. You pull that in and you say, all right, at the end of this is some trauma, a frozen, traumatized version of myself. And then you go and work with that person, right? Maybe it's your 5-year-old self. Go help them out. They didn't go anywhere. They're still in your subconscious running the show. You need to create a different situation for them. Maybe they feel like they aren't heard. So you need to imagine a position for your 5-year-old self to be truly heard. This is how we heal these parts of ourselves that run the show, the trauma and the subconscious. It's literally a technique, and it's that simple. None of this has to be hard. It just needs to be done, right? Some of you are quite sick, and one of my dear clients who I love very much, a young man who is very special to me, he's quite sick, he can't do much, right? So I said, that's okay. Then right now you're being just simply asked to understand non-doing right now. We beat ourselves up. He feels like he doesn't have a purpose anymore, that he's just wasting away. And that's not true. He does have a purpose. Sometimes it's to get to know that kind of stillness. I relate. Sometimes with my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I can't move, literally. So I have to just lay in bed. So I take that opportunity to process and meditate and pray, and to turn my pain into light so that it can nourish the rest of humanity. Good. So, oh yeah, I like that. So Milena says there's a lyrics from a band called The Dead Can Dance, right? And it says, "We are the children of the sun. There is room for everyone." Yeah, that's the feeling of equanimity, right? It's very beautiful. Yeah, so Diane's also pointing out that the famines in the background, right? Lots of famine. So the Irish potato famine, for those of us pale folks, you know, a lot of us have that Scotch Irish English background, and that certainly was a big piece, right? And it makes you afraid around food. And for me, it actually facilitated quite a lot of my own eating disorders around this fear of not having enough food, or fear that I am doing something wrong with food, or all kinds of stuff, right? So Genevieve's saying, hey, I'm struggling with overwhelm and the shame program. Great. Okay, let's address that, because everybody's feeling overwhelmed. I am too. So we have this, of course, overwhelm, but I want you to notice it. So everybody pull up overwhelm. That's easy, right? It's right in front of your face. But how does it feel in your body? Notice it. For me, overwhelm is actually here in my jaw. And I have a very big overbite. I know you can't really see it very well, but I have a large overbite, which causes quite a lot of issues with my jaw. So I'll feel overwhelm here and here in my temples, like a vice going like this, right? And then overwhelm also is here in my throat. I feel very stuck here when there's overwhelm showing up, right? So you got to notice it in your body first, because your body's the one who's holding it, right? And of course, what do we do with overwhelm? Well, we resist it, and it makes this worse. And then you just feel terrible. So you got to welcome it. This is the trick of healing all this stuff. You've got to welcome these frequencies and say, all right, you know what? I welcome this overwhelm. Let's say it right now. And perhaps you know where it is in your body. Maybe it's different than it is in mine, right? So we say, dear heart, I fully welcome this overwhelm in my jaw and my throat and my chest now. And take a deep breath. Yeah, and immediately for me, because I've been doing this technique a lot for years and years now, it'll dissolve, and it's quite hot. So I'll feel like this wave of heat, almost like a hot flash. And then everything tends to loosen up. Why would we want to welcome that overwhelm or that shame? It's full of information. It's showing up in your body so that you can look at it and understand it. And when you're finished learning about it, that's why it's there, right? When you're finished learning about it, then you can be done, right? So we say, dear heart, please lift any overwhelm or shame in my body out of my body and field now. And then take another deep breath. And then you might feel a lifting that went straight up through my nose. And then we replace it because of physics, right? Dear heart, fill my whole body and field with patience and presence and self-compassion now. And then take another deep breath. And that too, for me, often will feel hot. It'll feel like something coming in, but it feels really nice. And what people often report is that everything becomes physically brighter. I get this report almost every time people have been practicing this enough. If you don't feel anything at all, you just need to keep practicing. It means that you've got a lot of density around you. That's all. And as you do, you'll feel it get bigger and more expansive and lighter and brighter, and colors seem more vivid. Everything becomes more clear. So give that a shot. Work with that. A lot of times we don't get rid of our fear and overwhelm and our shame because we have been resisting it. We don't want to go feel it, but we are being asked to. And so it keeps coming up, right? We've got to process this. This is what processing is all about. Good. Yeah, so some folks are saying, hey, I'm really trying to get in these groups. I'm so glad. And we're ready for these groups, right? We're going to join a few different ones, and there's Angela and a lot of folks and working together. Yeah, that's for sure. So Caroline points something out too. Separately in Belize, there's folks that are mixed, and people say mixed race, but that's actually not the anthropologically correct term. So I purposefully don't use that concept of race because it's not real. And it's from a scientific basis. So we say, you know, someone who has many different ethnic backgrounds, or someone who has multiple phenotype backgrounds, right? So maybe their mom was an African and their dad was from England, right? But there's only one race. And that's because of scientific biological organization of species. Great. And so, yeah, we can't make assumptions. You can't make any assumptions, right? It's good. It's important. Yeah, so Diane's working hard on economic solutions that don't involve desecrating the hinterlands where she's at. Yeah, or exploitation, perhaps. Because sometimes we do need to use resources, right? Sometimes we have to cut that tree down. Perhaps it's for a lot of different reasons. But the more we can preserve, the better, with very gentle and more natural ways of being able to work with the elements and, of course, resources. And what's kind of cool, I think over the next several years, we're going to get access to more technology that will help us with all this disclosure, where part of that's going to be technological disclosure. So I have great hope, Diane, that we're going to be able to use resources in a quite different way. And it's not going to look like a Green New Deal, and it's not going to look like a petrodollar either. It's going to be something totally different. So that's going to be really interesting. Very good. Yeah, so Nuria mentions, it's interesting how the concept of beauty has been so thoroughly based on symmetry in the face, for example. That's right. Isn't that interesting? And it's so false, isn't it? Because it's not real. No one's ears are the exact same height. This ear's higher than the other, right? No one's eyebrows are the exact same. I always go like this. No one's symmetrical. And yet we've been given this false standard based on Photoshop that we should be. It's crazy. That's all ending too. I love the movement of no filters, no Photoshop, no touch-ups. Let's be us. You know, you can't really see this very well because of the lighting, but I have scars all over my face from really, really bad cystic acne and terrible chicken pox, right? So I have scars all over my face. And I actually learned to appreciate them. I got a headshot some years ago, and now I need to get a new one because I don't even look like that anymore. But I got this headshot, and he the photographer went totally nuts with the Photoshop, and it didn't even look like me anymore. It looked really weird. It looked like an alien version of me. So I emailed him and I said, I really appreciate that you're trying to make me look more beautiful, but to be honest, I kind of like my scars, man. Would you put them back, please? Because I want to be human. I'm an anthropologist. I want my humanity to show up in my picture. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I went crazy. And he gave me the real version of me that looked so much better. Isn't that wild? With all the scars, I was like, this is good stuff, man. This keep it in there. We're so interesting. Humans are so interesting. Each person is like the most amazing book. So it's super fascinating. Very good. So I'm just reading through our comments here, trying to notice any questions. Or Michael is mentioning, hey, Alzheimer's, what's going on? Yeah, Alzheimer's is a combination of things. It's not just brain shrinkage, it's also plaque, and it has to do a lot with different enzymes. It's both genetic and environmental. So that blows the whole nature nurture thing out of the water. It's very much a part of nurture as well. Heavy metals, also the lack of nutrients in our food because it's been pulled out of the soil without rest. So certainly one of the biggest changes that are going to have to happen is the way that we farm. Because the soil needs rest, it needs mycelium, and when you spray stuff on it, it kills the mycelium, which is part of the Endra's net. Most of what's underneath you in the soil is mycelium, and that's really key. So, they have incredible ways to shift and reclaim Alzheimer's. Here in South America, there's a medicine that they call combo. It comes from frogs, right? Very powerful. It's very intense. But with 4 treatments of combo, you can help begin to reverse very dramatically Alzheimer's. Same with psilocybin. So we have the medicines from nature available to us, and psilocybin's a miracle. It permanently cures depression. It can help with PTSD, especially for our veterans right now. And it's incredible as a painkiller in microdosing. It can help with fibromyalgia and MS and all these things. And certainly I'm not giving you medical advice, folks, because this might not be for you. But like where my original hometown was, Olympia, Washington has made this legal so that people can actually use it in therapy. And the results are astounding. Scientists are really finally getting permission to publish all this stuff. It's there. The cures are available. And the slow degradation of the human experience has been something well put in place for a very, very long time. Has a lot to do with technology, has a lot to do with purpose and the cultural concepts of what it really means to be human. And those things have to change because they're just corrupt and messy now. And that certainly causes more and more mental degradation, both physically and emotionally. Very good. So, Rosemary says, I'm going through money like water. It feels like I'm leaking it everywhere. And I know a few other people feel the same. Yeah, especially now because inflation's happening all over the world. It's going to be really intense. And so what you're noticing is very real. Yes. And so what are the best assets for you to really be working towards? I feel like we're all drowning in debt. And I certainly am too. And especially with my generation having so much college debt, an unbearable amount, in order to just function and be able to get normal jobs. It wasn't good enough for me just to have a bachelor's. I had to get a master's to get any sort of quality job. And it opened a lot of doors for me, but the debt was unbearable. And it still is. I can't really barely touch it. It's very difficult for people. And then furthermore, the assets that are really worth anything, like land, gold, and silver, medicine, and food, if you can at least put some effort into putting some of that aside, especially medicine and food, that's going to be very helpful to you in the long run. So, people need to understand that the system of money is completely collapsing. And that's why it's just leaking everywhere. The whole system's collapsing, so all the hoses have holes in it. And when you can just make money appear out of nowhere on a computer that has no basis in reality, like what's happened now, the whole world's going to suffer from that. Historically, we know exactly what happens. It's called the collapse of government. And I notice people are concerned about government right now. But that's because you're holding it separate from yourself. You are the government. We've forgotten that. We've been taught the opposite. We've been taught that it's separate from us. No, it's not. It starts here. If you want to change government and economics, you've got to change it inside yourself. So you've got to work on that scarcity abundance polarity. You need to think about what about scarcity really scares you. Perhaps you're even a little bit of afraid about abundance. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to charge that much because I'm afraid people won't purchase my efforts. That's that fear of abundance. I make many, many things incredibly affordable, and other things are much more expensive, but I'm always willing to work with people. And I've told you this many times, folks. If you need my help, ask and we'll work it out. But when we don't charge energetically the right amount, then the debt of energy falls on our clients, not you. We don't want to do that to them. So that's really key. And budget, budget, budget. Change your budget every week if you have to. Be willing to try your very best to not spend money you don't have. And notice how you can try to start getting better deals and bartering and other things. There's a lot of ways we can work outside of the normal money system. And I highly encourage local currency based on the workforce. They've successfully done this in Madison, Wisconsin. It's called the Madison dollar. It's been there for ages. Look this up. It's not gonna be hard because people want out of the system. They know it's corrupt. But a currency that's based on the workforce's ability to show up, that's real currency. It's backed by something. It's backed by your hard work. But it's local. So look at that. There can be efforts around that. It might really be necessary because the dollar is becoming more and more worthless. And the rug's going to be pulled out from underneath us. That whole system's crashing before our eyes very quickly. No one's talking about it in the mainstream media, but it's upon us. And it's been seen and known for a long time, and it's been put in place on purpose. So to try to push us towards a internet-based only system. And that simply isn't logical. It can't work. Especially here in Ecuador, where everyone uses cash. You can't buy anything with your debit card here. Good luck trying to do that. It's not going to work. You have to have cash. So, that's going to be something that's going to be put in place by us. We have to decide to do that. I'm all for it. Go look that up and roll with it. Run with it. Do something with it. and barter, barter, barter. I barter all the time. It's really great. It's really important. I get a lot of needs met that way. Good. And money, yeah, definitely has a contraction around it because you've been taught to be valuing things according to money, my friends, and that's false value. First, replace it with the true value. All things have an infinite amount of value because they literally come from grace and the grace of Source God. All things, I'm going to repeat that. We got to switch our mindset from everything has a certain amount of money it's worth. That's not true. That's not the foundation of reality. What's the real foundation? You can use money as a tool, but what's the real foundation? All things have an infinite amount of energetic worth because they come from the grace of God, from the grace of Source. Start there. Keep telling yourself that. Sometimes we need to repeat this stuff in our head so that our body and our brain catch up to it and really begin to notice a difference in your feelings around value. Good. Good. So Magda's saying, what significance do the names we carry hold? What's your view on changing one's name? Could changing a surname even be a kind of DNA clearing ritual? You know, that's actually come up recently, so I'm not really surprised you're asking this question. I was watching a random YouTube video about this like yesterday, so there you go. There's how the field works. I think, yeah, I've had friends who've needed to change their name because it helped establish a more appropriate identity for the world. But in my opinion, not having any attachment to identity is more important. So do what you need to do so that the presentation of the self is appropriate for the world, but be willing to unattach yourself from identity. Again, we can't build society off of identities. We have to build society off of the grace of God, the thing that doesn't move, Source, right? But I think that, you know, presentation is important. When I was able to like say, hey, I have a master's degree, that was part of my presentation to the world. People saw me as more knowledgeable. So changing one's names can be important. Perhaps you inherited a name from an abusive person in your life. Maybe that ritual of shifting into a new presentation, but also not being attached, not attaching your worth to the new name could be a very powerful way to heal. So yeah, go for it. If that's really resonating with you, do it. Do it. You're being called to do something interesting for your life. Go for it. It's awesome. Okay. So Daniel says, my question is about the inherited traumas passed down through my lineage. Oh, he's asking about the name too. Yeah, so this is a thing. All right, I think I answered the question then. Go for it. Go for it. But make sure you're not building your identity on something that's got to change all the time. Instead, build it from Source up. Know that you don't need to be attached to anything, including your name, because, of course, your name is not you. I am not Elizabeth. I happen to be a beautiful soul living in a body named Elizabeth. How cool. Very good. Monica's wondering, you know, she feels alone, stuck, overwhelmed. Should she stay? Should she go? You know, it took us a long time to get to this point, Monica. It took us a long time to work to get here. You are part of Indra's net. If you go before your natural stepping out of your body, And I think that you're talking about feeling suicidal. And if you're not, then I'm speaking to all of you who are. Then there's a huge loss for all of us. Reach out. There's all these people here in the chat. They're your friends. They're important. They're real. They can see you. They can hear you. Reach out. Reach out. Email me. My email is elizabeth@seerandscientist.com. Write me. I read your emails. It takes me a little while to respond. Be patient with me. But I read them. And I always, always pray and bless and love the people who show up. Don't be afraid to reach out. There's so many of us out here in Indra's net. Billions and billions of people who are your friends, who are your brothers and sisters. If you leave, we'll feel it. I feel it every day. When people kill themselves, I can feel it. And it's devastating. When people die prematurely, it's extremely hard on all of us because they thought they were alone. Let me give you a visual, okay, of what happens to people when they feel this way, so that you can understand how important empowerment is and that we notice these individuals around us and reach out to them and offer for them to reach out to us. A simple compliment, a simple gesture, a gentle smile can go a long way. So we have this source field. Imagine it like a white sheet being held nice and taut. Here we have someone who's really traumatized. They're feeling stuck. They feel alone. They're going through a lot of dense overwhelm and shame and all, name it, right? Trauma. It's dense. If you put that, it's like a metal marble being put on the sheet. What's going to happen? It creates a hole, right? It dips down. It doesn't leave the source field. You're always part of the source field no matter what. But it creates this dent in the sheet, right? Here's a person who got the tools one way or another, working on themselves. They've been clearing up the energetics of their experience. They've been really, really working hard, right? They become more and more clear. They're less dense. They're more formless. What happens when you put them on the sheet, right? Well, they'll float above it. They'll float on it and they'll become more transparent. So there's very little difference between them and the source field. Technically, we might call that enlightenment, or someone who's very blessed, or someone who's saintly, right? So the difference between these two people is simply that one has the tools and the other doesn't. So this one might notice, Monica, I notice you. You're down here in this hole. It's pretty dark down there. No wonder you think you're alone. No wonder you can't see the source field around you and in you, right? So I've given you some of the tools today to get started with. Re-listen to this and take some notes. In the description, I'm going to add more resources. And if you're missing them, email me. For some reason, people have a really hard time finding the description of YouTube videos. It's usually it's kind of hidden. When you look at the YouTube video, there's this little weird arrow that's not really an arrow. If you click that, then the description pops up. So people will email me and say, I can't find the description. Look in all my past videos and you'll see that I have resources for you. These are the tools. I use them every day. I use them on myself. That's how I got to where I am, right? And they're simple, they're easy, thank God, because hard tools, just no one can use them. They're too overwhelmed. A nice, easy heart command is actually such a blessing, right? Well, all of us who have the tools, we can throw these folks a lifesaver, right? And they can start to work with their trauma, and they become lighter and lighter and lighter, and they get out of the hole, and then they can see Indra's net. They can see that they're part of something bigger. They can feel it. They can see it, feel it, and know it with their whole body. And Monica, that's what I'm hoping for you. Because what you're feeling is real and it's hard, but it's not the end. It's not time to go yet. Because if you can accomplish this, even a little bit, it elevates the whole of all of our consciousness. That's why the loss of a single person from suicide is an absolute devastation to what we're here to do as a species. That way you know you're never alone. Very good. So Magali is asking, when we do this small exercise of healing, are we acting into the savior path, or how do you make the difference? So no, I don't like to consider that like savior complex work when we're doing trauma work on our whole genetic lineage. It's actually an ancient concept. It's called the concept of the seventh generation. Every 7 generations, a new person comes in who's aware enough of this genetic trauma that they can start working on it. You're not trying to save anybody. What you're trying to do is work on yourself and become more sovereign. So as you become more sovereign, you feel more empowered. That empowerment helps to elevate everyone else. And here's this idea, enlightenment is not enough. Being a saint is not enough. Once you've attained a state where you're clear, you've still got to do upkeep, right? You're going to get traumatized a little bit every day. You got to work with that. You got to be able to keep it up, or else you're going to be weighed down more and more. That's why people have these great peak experiences, but then they stop using the tools because they feel like they're going to stay there, and then they find out they don't because life happens. But we're aware now that we need to work on our genetic trauma. So these healings that we do for ourselves and others, it's because enlightenment isn't enough. You need to be out there in the world for the benefit of all beings. That's what Buddhism says, or in this case, service, sovereign service to all, as other vantage points might say. So good deeds are part of the miracles that happen. Your self-work will lead to a very wonderful type of service to all consciousness. And when you work on healing your trauma, like I said, it helps elevate all consciousness. So that's the difference between a finding yourself in savior mode and finding yourself in benevolence. Very good. Melissa's really feeling overwhelmed, and she's got a lot of trauma in her body around making a really important decision. Yeah, you're going to need to really work with that trauma, honey. It's really distorting, and you're quite right. There is nothing personal. That's why I like to say, we talk about personal stuff here, but we elevate it to the universal every week, every month, right? And so when we elevate it to the universal and we say, probably I'm not the only one going through this. You're not. Look what just happened with Daniel and our other friend asking about name changes. They had the same exact question back to back. They're certainly not sitting next to each other by the computer. So always assume you're not the only one, and that as you achieve your decision-making process, and get through into your body, you need to use your mind with pros and cons. You need to use your heart with all the experience and memory that you have, and you need to trust your gut, who will help you to do things in harmony with nature. That's how I make decisions. It's a full body decision-making process. Your brain can't make these things alone. We've been taught wrongly that you have one brain, you have three, and you need to use all of them. So systematically sit down, do pros and cons about your decisions. Then go into the heart and ask the heart about your decision. It's based off your experience and true body memory. And then go deep into your gut and ask about that decision. It's based on you surviving and thriving on this earth in harmony with nature. And do it again and again if you have to. And focus on working on that trauma. Make your list, shift it every day, replace it, shift it, replace it. Command it to be so through your heart now and breathe. You've got this, Melissa. All right, my friends, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to go through all of our amazing questions here. And, we have a very beautiful, diverse set of experiences here. And a lot of different concepts that are really deep. And I'm just noticing, what's happening here. Marion's concerned about abduction. Is it dangerous? Well, yeah, I think technically abduction's not pleasant, but the last time it happened to me was one of the most important events of my life. Go check out my last September, I think it was, where I talk about this, and I walk through what I did to make it an extremely important and blessed event in my life instead of a trauma. There's a process to that. There's nothing to be afraid of. There really isn't. And if you're afraid, then you need to follow your fear and dig into why you're afraid and find it in your body. Don't resist it. Acknowledge it. Know it. Understand it. If you want to get higher, faster in consciousness, follow your fear so that you can unravel it. It's simply consciousness under pressure, right? And it's normal for us to have fear, of course, because it leads us into discoveries and healing and opportunities. All right. So this is important. There's so much here, and I wish I could spend another hour with you, but we have a beautiful pillar of light to build together. And I absolutely love all these things that people are noticing. Yeah, and so lots of really neat people here, and I'm so, so grateful for everything you're saying. And I'm glad, Monica, that you're not suicidal. I know some people might be, and we appreciate you. Yeah, so lots of things here, my friends. Many of the answers can be found in the resources that on the replay, I'll have it underneath in the description, right? And I'm so glad that this is helpful to you. All right, very good. So again, my apologies that I can't answer all of our questions. And I'm going to give it a go next time to try to do as many as I can, like I always do. But we have more and more people joining us these days. And so sometimes I'm not able to get to everything. But I really appreciate what everyone's brought to the table. Thank you. Thanks for being open and being here. All right, let's get to work. We have a special gift we can do for the world each month, a beautiful pillar of light. We've had some suggestions around it. But in this case, I find that right now we're going to direct it to the whole package, okay? Because everything's changing. Government, economy, society, beliefs, ideas, language, even the way we get our needs met, right? So we're going to do our pillar of light to support the reconciliation of light and dark. And that's going to be what we're going to focus on right now. And when I asked Source, like, oh my gosh, where do we even put this thing? I kept getting Africa. So we've been there before. A few months ago, we built a pillar of light in Namibia for all of the young people who are suffering, especially in the world. But there's this where there's been a lot of war, and you might have seen it a little bit in the news. And so that's where I'm being drawn to, is this borderland area. We don't need to know exactly where it is. I just need you to imagine it with me, right? So you can kind of generally get an idea of where Sudan is. So let's go there energetically together. And I want you to envision all of us standing together in a big circle. We've had over 100 people. I think at our peak, we had almost 150 people together with us today. And so we've got a nice quality group here. And this is for everyone too. If you are listening to this replay, you can still add all of your energy into this. So let's go ahead and we're going to envision this big circle of people here on these borderlands. And I want you to allow yourself to be just huge, right? Big, huge energy, because that's your soul. You're massive. These human bodies, they seem so small in comparison to who you really are, right? And so we're going to stand in the circle together. Allow yourself to be big and gigantic. We want to cover this whole area where there's this terrible war and all this hatred of each other. This us and them is really well established there, right? It's very tribal. All right, good. All right, so we're going to go into the gut first. So I want you to just notice your gut. And I'm asking all of our gut minds, what is the foundation of our pillar that's going to support the reconciliation of dark and light? And I am getting that concept of the natural human coming up. The human who recognizes and remembers that they come from Earth. That there's a precious, powerful relationship in that. So allow yourself to kind of feel it in your energy, right? Right there in your gut. And we're going to notice it and let it take on a color, perhaps, right? For me, I see both, I see all the different beautiful skin tones of the phenotypes of humanity, right? Like a rainbow in my gut. And I also see green, that living green and the living blue energy of the earth. And they're all playing and having fun. So that's kind of how I see this energy here in the gut. So with a deep breath, let's project it to the center of our group now. Wow, that's interesting. So every pillar we make is totally different. I never know what's going to happen. This opened up like this huge portal, it looks like. It created a foundation that's like really deep. And yet it expands up and out very beautifully, kind of like a spotlight. So it's both deep and bright. This idea, it's grounded and expansive at the same time. How wonderful. So this is the foundation of our pillar. Now let's come into the heart. We ask the heart, what is the energy from the heart that we can use in our pillar that will reconcile dark and light, that will encourage this reconciliation? It's three things: forgiveness, justice, and in this case, forgiveness being in the form of mercy, right? Like I said, sometimes it's not your job to forgive somebody, but you can still have mercy. So we'll probably say mercy in this case. So mercy Justice is a balancing, right? It's what we're experiencing right now. We're experiencing a balancing. This is justice, right? That reconciliation is definitely going to support justice, equality justice. Justice that's in equanimity, not multi-tiered systems according to who has money and who doesn't, right? But the third piece in the heart is harmony too, because harmony is a bit different than balance. We were talking about harmonizing earlier. That harmonizing can be done through things you do and say, what we might say right speech and right action, but it can also be done through blessings, right? Through giving energy where there might be some missing, balance where there's wonkiness, patience where there's anger. So we have that triad of harmony, justice, and mercy in the heart. I want you to pull it up in your heart and notice what it might look like. Does it have a color or shape? It's very beautiful. It's very golden to me. It's like a ruby and a sapphire and a beautiful golden energy all together, right? It's kind of what it looks like for me. So pull this feeling up in your heart, and we're going to project it with a deep breath to the center of our pillar now. Oh, cool. So that little triad of energy got put into the center, and then it started spinning really fast. And it started spinning counterclockwise. And then it just let off all this light. So now it's all very bright. It looks like gold light everywhere. But it's being maintained by this really deep, powerful, expansive energy from the foundation. Very cool. All right, let's come up into the crown and the third eye area right here, right? The upper dantian. I'm asking for us, what's the next energy to top off our pillar here? I hear the words beauty. It's an appreciation of multiple things. The beauty and the power of the laws of the universe, which are creation, transformation, which sometimes people call destruction, but it's really transformation, preservation, and integration. These things are beautiful. They work together and they are beautiful. The beauty of asymmetry, the beauty of the fact that one ear is a little higher than the other, the beauty of the differences and similarities between human beings, the beauty of identity or the lack thereof, the beauty of your higher soul, your immortal soul, and the beauty of your humanness. So pull this up, this appreciation, this being able to see beauty in all things will help the reconciliation of light and dark to occur. Pull it up in your mind. Let it take on a color or a form. And then with a deep breath, project it to the top of our pillar. Wow. This just basically turned this really bright magenta color from the top. So it's being maintained by that deep depth and expansiveness from the foundation, the spinning and radiating power of the center of our pillar. But then it built this whole other layer to it that just goes on and on and on. This idea that there is beauty in all things, even beauty in transformation and change. is integral to being the best of humanity that we can be. And it's a gift to the universe, my friends. This isn't a common idea in the universe, but humans, we can bring it to the table. Let's bring it to the table. We've done this as a special gift. And so let's just honor it and notice it. And on the behalf of the human race, for the benefit of all living beings, for the benefit of especially those who are stuck in the us and them energetic that's so damaging, we offer this pillar of light as a great blessing, as a living prayer, as a transmission of light, a transmitter of our hopes for the reconciliation of light and dark on this world right now. And just gently disconnect with a deep breath from your mind, your heart, and your gut, so we can allow this pillar to do its work. As so many pillars in the world that we've built, so many, for many years, they just out there supporting through this radiant light and wisdom that we bring to the table together. And thank you for adding your energy and thoughts into this, your intentions, your hopes for what's happening for us now. It's not that it's coming, it's that it's here. It's that you're in it now. So I'm very glad that you're here. You're so important to Indra's net. You are the child of the sun, and there's room for everyone. So beautiful. You are graced, and you are grace. You are here because of that grace of Source moving through you. Your presence is key right now. Keep choosing each moment to be the creator you are. Keep choosing each moment. The right actions, words. Discern with your whole body. Be present. Work on yourself, and you will be changing the world. You are not separate from it. You are one. We are one. And you know how much I love you. I'm here for you. Write me if you need to. I'll try my best to answer more questions next time. So if you had one that I didn't answer, hang on to it. Let it evolve. You might be surprised. You might end up getting the answer before we talk next. And so then I'll see you next month. And I'm thinking about trying to do something for my birthday, because my birthday's on the 15th of October. So I might try to do something with all of you. Maybe we build a pillar of light together, like a big old birthday candle on Friday the 15th. But the next community calls the 31st of October, which is Halloween technically in North America. But that's okay. Nobody usually goes out until the nighttime. And so I hope that we will see each other on the 15th as well, because I do like getting together and offering gifts for my birthday. So I can answer questions that day perhaps, and maybe we'll see what else comes up. So I love to be with you every month. It's my very favorite time. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for all of your very wise and interesting questions and all of what you're going through. It's very valid, it's real, and it's important to be seen and heard and known. I see you. I hear you. Thank you. And all my love. Namaste. Blessings to you. Goodbye, my friends.